OTAs are here for your Minnesota Vikings this week. We are now on day 3 of organized team activities, and it's fun because this actually signals the start of, I guess not necessarily the start of, but this signals that we're one step closer to the start of football Sundays. You're out grilling, you're having a drink or two, you're watching Red Zone, you're watching the games. We're one step closer to that. We're about halfway through the offseason, so that's some exciting stuff. And what's really cool is this is the time where now the coaching staff and the players, for the most part, veteran players and rookie players alike, they get together and they start getting familiar with each other, especially if you got a new coaching staff, in particular with Gary Kubiak. But especially for the rookie players to get familiar as well with the team, with the playbook, what have you. And this actually signals how we're one step closer to training camp. So I'm actually looking forward. There are some position battles that I'm looking forward to. And again, this doesn't really count for OTAs because they're running around in helmets and shirts and shorts. There's no pads. There's no contact allowed in organized team activities. So they're just running around getting a good workout in as a team. But this is actually getting one step closer to training camp where the real position battles take place. I've got 3 position battles, well, really 2. One position battle that we should have had in addition to that, but a player took that away from us, so I'll get to that. First position battle that I'm looking forward to, again, in training camp when that eventually happens, the wide receiver 3 spot. So is it going to be Jordan Taylor? Is it going to be Chad Beebe? Is it going to be Brandon Zylstra? Is it going to be Jeff Badette? Is it going to be Dillon Mitchell? There's a crowd of talent there to where any one of those guys could be your third wide receiver for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm looking forward to that. Number 2, the right guard battle. Josh Klein versus Drew Samia. I'm hoping with Gary Kubiak there, they're saying we don't care how much we paid Josh Klein. This is going to be a true test regardless of what we're paying who. The best player is going to start at right guard. I'm excited, man. I will admit, I would love to see Drew Samia start if he's ready. Of course, whoever the best player is, that's who should start. But I'm a Drew Samia stan, dude. That dude is a beast. Drew Samia is the big brother to the little brothers. And I get that he's younger than, like, Riley Reef and maybe even Brian O'Neill and Pat Elflein. I get that. But he's essentially the big brother that the rest of the offensive linemen that they need, particularly when you're going up against defensive lines like the Philadelphia Eagles or the Chicago Bears twice, because when that defensive line or that front 7, when they beat you and they sack Kirk Cousins or they get a couple of TFLs on Alex Madison or Dalvin Cook or Mike Boone, what have you, they're going to let you know about it. They're going to let the offensive line know about it. They're very vocal. They're a vocal group. And they just need somebody in that offensive line because, like I said, Pat Elflein, Riley Reef, Brian O'Neill, I don't know anything about Josh Klein yet, but we'll see how he is. But those guys, they're more like, oh, shucks, like I'm just going to make the right plays. They need to do once in a while where they kind of match that intensity of those defensive lines where they're like, yo, man, sit your ass down. Shut up. Sit down. Sit down. I'm the big boss now. And it feeds off energy to the rest of the players. So just imagine a little brother. He's getting ganged up on by 2 or 3 bullies, and then his brothers come up and step in and like, yo, leave my brother alone. And all of a sudden, that little brother that was getting intimidated, suddenly he's got courage. He's like, you know what? Yeah, let's take them all on. And he's that big brother that offensive line needs. So I'm excited to see that right guard battle. And the third position battle that we should have had, but we're not, is the cornerback 4 position because Holton Hill has robbed us Minnesota Vikings fans of the cornerback 4 position spot after being suspended for the first 4 games of the 2019 season due to performance-enhancing drugs, testing positive for PEDs. So Xavier Rhodes, Trey Waynes, they haven't been traded. I'm assuming that they're going to be on the roster. Mike Hughes, assuming that he's going to be back and fully healthy, he'll be the cornerback 3. And we were going to be looking at Mackensie Alexander versus Holton Hill. And I tell you what, a year ago from this moment, a year ago today, it would have been easy. It would have been like, okay, Holton Hill, he dropped. He was an undrafted free agent. He should have been drafted, but he had off-the-field issues. And Mackensie Alexander, he hasn't been good at all up to that point. But last year was totally different. Mackensie Alexander, I compared him just to 1 year. Relax, guys. Don't get all hyped up. But he had that kind of a similar impact as far as an all-around cornerback, not really all-around cornerback, but a pseudo-linebacker role, such like Antoine Winfield for his whole career. He had that 1 year similar to that last year, and Holton Hill is a much better cover corner, but everything that Mackensie Alexander offers, his coverage is meh, but he can rush the passer, he can make tackles out in the open field. This dude is really good. He had a really good season, so it would have been interesting to see if Mackensie Alexander can continue that momentum from 2018 going into next season versus Holton Hill. But now we're not going to have it because by default it's going to be Mackensie Alexander. So anyway, OTAs are here. And we need to understand something. OTAs are voluntary, okay? It's not a mandatory thing that you have to be at. And that leads me to this next topic. I didn't even want to talk about it, but apparently I've seen a couple of articles that come out about this, and I'm just like, come on, why is this even a discussion? Why is this even news? It's Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs missed the first 2 days of OTAs and the media. And you know what? This isn't a slight at the team or the fans, because from what I've seen from feedback from the fans and from the team, the Vikings themselves, they've been great. Maybe you got a few fans that are like, man, I wish Stefon Diggs would be here. But the team, like, they're being asked, it's more so the media. The media is asking the team, oh, Stefon Diggs, he's not here. He hasn't been at OTAs. Is this a problem? Like, what does this mean? Like, where is he? When do you know? Is he going to be back anytime soon? And they're like, yeah, we have no problem. Stefon Diggs will show up when he shows up. And it's like, that's good. Why is this news, media? And this isn't just isolated to the Minneapolis, Minnesota media. This is more so just a national media of the NFL, whereas you see this across the league. OTAs, according to the NFL, and this is from NFL.com, okay? As per Article 21 of the Collective Bargaining Agreement, each club's official voluntary 9-week off-season program is concluded in 3 phases, and phase 3 consists of OTAs, which is where we are at right now. It's voluntary. Stefon Diggs isn't at voluntary off-season workouts. Who gives a damn? Who cares? Why do we care? This isn't a big deal. Like, why is it? It says voluntary, but we're like, oh, man. It's like one of those things where it's like, I used to work in sales, and I work Monday through Friday, right? And then every other Saturday, they would offer, hey, we have voluntary Saturday 4-hour shifts. Come in. It's voluntary. It's not mandatory. It's voluntary, but it's encouraged. Wink, wink. It's like basically it means you better come here, because if you don't come here on Saturdays, oh, he's not down for the team. He's not dedicated. He's not trying to get better. Shut up. Shut up. Shut the fudge up. I said fudge. I didn't say that word that you think that I said. But why is this a big deal? This is nothing. And look, this is the offseason. So media and everything like that, I guess we're looking for stories to sensationalize. You don't think I want stories to talk about? There are times where I get up right before this podcast and my wife is like, hey, what are you going to talk about today? And I'm like, I have no idea. Nothing's happening. And then something will happen at the 11th hour, or I think of something out of the blue. But it's the offseason. This is where you need to love what you're doing. If you're doing a sports podcast, you need to really, really love it, because the offseason is a grind. You don't think I want stories to talk about? This is not one of them. Let the man, Stefon Diggs, let him live. Let him live. Kirk Cousins, he mentioned, I expect Stefon Diggs to be back tomorrow, as in today, day 3, Thursday. What's today's date? Today's date is what, the 23rd, whatever it is? Okay, fine. We expect Stefon Diggs to be here on day 3. I haven't seen anything updated on Bleacher Report yet. Let me do a quick refresher real quick. Anything doesn't look like it, so no news yet. And by all I know, because I'm recording this literally Thursday morning right now, the day that you're getting it. So I would think right now it's like 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so it's about 9 a.m. over in Minneapolis, but there's no news yet. I don't care. Let this man live. And guess what? He's working out. He's on Instagram showing his workouts, and he was on the cover of East Bay. And guess what? He looks great. He looks like he's in great shape. You know what? He's going to come back when it's mandatory practices. If he doesn't show up, then there's a problem. Then it's like, all right, maybe he's not happy with the team. But right now, who cares? Shut the fudge up. He's going to come back. He's going to be on the team week 1, and he's going to pass 1,000 yards, and he's going to catch like 10 touchdowns, and he's going to be a beast, and he's going to be one of the top 3 receivers at catching a 50-50 ball like he has been the last 2 years. Shut up. This is a non-story. Get this out of my face. Tired of this. Tired of this, man. That's why, people go for reaching stories and everything, and that's where people go, the people that are reading or watching or listening to podcasts are like, oh, you're just reaching for a story. This is clickbait and whatever, and they kind of put an umbrella and blanket everybody else under that. That's not true. Why do I get that? I'm not trying to reach for stories. Really? Oh, you're just looking for attention. Really? Oh, you're right. I just get up on this podcast and do this whole setup, this whole studio setup. Guess what? I'm in my own house, damn it. Not in my mama's basement like so many people have alluded to. And I do this whole studio setup, and I do podcasts here, and I publish it on the internet just so nobody can see it. You think I want attention on this show? Yes, I do. Gosh. Oh, God, the offseason is just so frustrating. But anyway, moving forward from that. More offseason news for your Minnesota Vikings. This really isn't connected to your Vikings, but, every time a big-time player is out there, we automatically think to ourselves, and really every fan base thinks to themselves for all 32 teams, should we get that player, yes or no? And right now, that's going to be Gerald McCoy. So Gerald McCoy was released by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and should the Minnesota Vikings, what do you think I'm going to say? Yes, they should go after him, but I don't think they'll be able to. Now, if you let Kyle Rudolph go, I'll talk about that because this story just will not end. You want to talk about distractions? Okay, I talked about it before, how hopefully Garrett Bradbury, his signing doesn't take too long because then it becomes a distraction. I get it. It was because they couldn't free up cap space. This is a distraction now with Kyle Rudolph because this is just going back and forth. It's like they're playing tug of war with each other, but Gerald McCoy, unless they release Kyle Rudolph in a $7.6 million cap hit, I don't see how they're going to be able to sign Gerald McCoy. Now, there would have been a situation where they could have signed McCoy even with Kyle Rudolph on the roster, and that brings me back to Everson Griffen, where it's he was expected to make $12.5 million against the cap, and now he's making $8 million against the cap. And it's why? That's why I say the Minnesota Vikings, Mike Zimmer, Rick Spielman, there's blind loyalty with this team. It may not screw this team this year because it seems like Rob Brzezinski, he's done a hell of a job managing the cap room for your Vikings team. But maybe this is something that may come back to haunt the Vikings in future years just because of the philosophy of, I love this guy. I love this player. He's like a son to me, so we're going to keep him at all costs, even if there's a guy who's arguably just as good or not that far off as good as the next guy. So Stephen Weatherly, $720,000 against the cap. And Everson Griffen, is Everson Griffen, 10 and a half times better than Stephen Weatherly? No. He might be better. I would argue he's just as good. But let's say if Everson Griffen, if he reduces cap hit even further, or if he was completely gone. Because right now, you're looking at a defensive line of Everson Griffen, starting from the right end on down. Everson Griffen, Linval Joseph, Shamar Stefan, and Danielle Hunter, whereas, maybe you could have instead, if Everson Griffen was gone, that $8 million cap hit, not Stephen Weatherly, Danielle Hunter at right end, Linval Joseph, Gerald McCoy, and Stephen Weatherly. That would be really, really good. But should the Vikings go after him? Yes, they should. Can they? Probably not. I'd like to see it, but it's probably not going to happen. Now to this Kyle Rudolph situation. They're still going back and forth with each other. It's they're just Kyle Rudolph, he came out on the camera and he's just talking about, he confirmed the Pro Football Talk, I believe by Mike Florio, in which the Vikings, they offered him a 5-year contract extension. He's like, hey, we're working on it. And Mike Zimmer even talked about it. He said, hey, both sides, they're working on the deal. I'm optimistic that Kyle Rudolph will be back. I hope this gets resolved. I want him to be back. I really, really want this dude to be back. But now it's getting to the point where it's I don't care what happens anymore. Like I said, I want him to be back, but overall, I just don't want this story to drag on. It's great for this podcast. It's great to be oh, hey, this is going on and gives me something to talk about. But it's I just want this to be over because I'm tired of talking about this all the time for the last, 2+ weeks now. This needs to get done, whether he gets re-signed or whether he goes somewhere else. And then also, I think Darren Doogie Wolfson reported how the Vikings are open to trading Kyle Rudolph. They would want at least a third-round draft pick. I don't know if they'll necessarily get that, but it's like this is getting leaked from somewhere. So I'm guessing it's from the team themselves because Kyle Rudolph, there's no leak. He's getting out on camera and saying, yeah, hopefully something gets done. But as far as Darren Doogie Wolfson's report of, the Vikings are open to trading him for a third-round draft pick, I'm guessing that's getting leaked out by the team. So I just hate how this is just going back and forth. I want this to get resolved. Why I want Kyle Rudolph to be back and why I'm not against the idea of a 5-year extension for Kyle Rudolph. I talked about this on Tuesday where I'm like, hey, normally at his age, he was 29. I think he's 30 years old going into 2019. And a 5-year extension, you think, man, I don't know if a 5-year extension is warranted. Now, more so, you're probably looking at 2 or 3 years that's guaranteed, and the last 2 will be, all right, you're just cut. Like, what? It's never the deal that they announce, hey, he's getting this big kick-ass 10-year forever $1 trillion deal where it's like, okay, really it's only a 2-year guaranteed deal. But the reason why I'm not opposed to a little bit of a long-term extension beyond just 1 year or 2 years, maybe even 3 years, is because the way Kyle Rudolph plays. I talked about this on Tuesday. His finesse style of play may be the reason why his career lasts longer than you typically imagine. Like Rob Gronkowski, super beast tight end, very physical, will truck you over, but he suffered injuries, and he's just been broken down the last couple of years, and he hasn't been the same player. At his peak, Rob Gronkowski was clearly the best tight end in the league. But as the years have went on, it was just like he started to fade away. And it wasn't even a fade. It was more like he went from the peak to bam. Just like, oh, man, this is kind of tough to watch. And he finally retired. Whereas Kyle Rudolph, he's been a steady beating drum. Like he avoids contact. He's not looking to run people over. I think last year he had a more physical year, but overall through his career, he's not a beast of a tight end. And I think that's the reason why his career is going to last longer, because he's not all about the wear and tear on his body. It's kind of like basketball. You compare like Kevin Garnett, super physical power forward, just jumping out the gym, defense, and really just using a lot of torque in his body, compared to my guy Dirk Nowitzki, more of a finesse player. I'm not going to talk about which player is better. You guys in Minnesota, you're not going to like what I have to say. That's another conversation for a different day. But both players is kind of similar, because Kevin Garnett, super physical dude, plays defense. Dirk Nowitzki, very finesse dude, often labeled as soft. I think it's unfair. But when you look at how their careers like kind of panned out towards the end, like Kevin Garnett, the end, I think it started that last year in Boston, where it was like, okay, won a championship, and then the next couple of years after that, it just went bam, like, oh man, like then he went to Brooklyn and it was like really bad. The drop off was terrible, and that was like he was like age 37 at that point. But then compare that to Dirk Nowitzki, where even at 37, like he's still like the number one option, 18 points a game, shooting well from the field, and he was able to last a little bit longer. Same thing with Tim Duncan, the big fundamental. His technique was really good. He wasn't a KG type of dude, but his career lasted a little bit longer as he got older, as far as being a significant contributor to the team. So that's why KG in this point is Rob Gronkowski, and Dirk Nowitzki is Kyle Rudolph, even though Kyle Rudolph is nowhere close to the impact type of player that Dirk Nowitzki was. But it's kind of similar. So I think with Kyle Rudolph being that player that's, I wish he would break a tackle. I wish he would too. But guess what? Now that we have Irv Smith Jr. to do that, now Kyle Rudolph can just be himself. I think this dude I think he can last until 33, maybe even 34, the way that he's playing. It's all about skill, all the physical stuff. It'd be great, but then his career will be cut down a little bit shorter. You're seeing that with Greg Olsen. He's been injured the last year or so we'll see. So I want Kyle Rudolph back, but I'm just sick and tired of talking about it. Just get a deal done or trade his ass or something. Just get it done. We do this 3 times a week. Mediokr Best Sports Podcast with Realistic Randy. The next podcast will be on Saturday. I was out last Saturday because I had single parent baby duty with my son. But anyway, that's taken care of. This Saturday, find it on my personal YouTube channel, Realistic Randy. Twitter @realistic_Randy. Facebook @realistic Randy. We'll see you Saturday.